it gets here though.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, right. English globally family. And now, English globally family.
Nikita, we got a package that was like this big from CMU. I wonder what it could be.
I think it's the diploma.
I think it is too. I was like so excited. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad. The news on Texas snowstorm is hit globally.
yeah, you missed out. It was quite a week.
Oh boy. And my friends in Pittsburgh are also saying that it's super cold outside.
Hmm.
Nikta, where are you from?
I am from Dubai. Right now I'm based in Dubai, but I'm born in Mumbai.
Uh-huh. So, are you from India?
Yes.
Great. Good to see you. I'm sharing the links. So I need to stop recording. Thank you very much, Jay. Good
Hi.
evening. Good evening, all of you. Please mute all.
Hi.
Mute all participants. Jay.
Hello.
Yeah, that's fine. Now I need to mute all. No, the thing is that. So very good evening, all of you, and good morning to Nathan Price, because right now it's a morning at his place. As we know very well, today's topic that is human is on Moon 2024. It's a project of Nathan Price, and he takes the interview of participants, people every day till 2024. NASA is planning to send the people to the moon, and he talks about the moon and space laboratory and spacecraft and orbits and rovers, so all about the things which are related to space. So now I'm not going to take more time. So I'm just handling the session to Mr. Nathan Price. So over to you, Nathan Price. Just go
Well,
ahead.
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Shashiraj. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was born and I currently live in Houston, Texas, in the United States, and I'm a native English speaker. I'm passionate about space exploration development and the potential of it for actually to benefit humanity. I'm the founder of the North Houston Space Society, which with the whole COVID lockdown, we've been having our meetings online. And if you're interested in this topic, you're more than welcome to come and attend our meetings, though they're really, depending upon what part of the world you're in, it might be at an unfavorable time. But our website's northhoustonspace.org. And as Sasha Raj mentioned, I'm doing this Countdown to the Moon project where I'm interviewing a person a day to find out what they think about us going to the moon. And I'm interested in everybody's opinion about this. People who have questions about it, people who think it's a bad idea, people who think it's a good idea. I'm interested in talking to everybody and understanding the different points of view. So um, I'll talk more about this at the end of the presentation, but I would encourage each of you to go to countdowntothemoon.org and you can see my interviews, which could be a way to do improve your English listening practice as I talk to a wide variety of English speakers. And also it could be a good way to practice your English skills in an interview type setting where you could participate in the project and you and I can have a conversation about this topic. So I'll talk more about that later. But what I wanted to cover today was tell you about the first time we landed on the moon with the Apollo 11 um, launch, and then talk about the next time that we're going to land on the moon through a new program called Artemis. And then finally come back to my Countdown to the Moon project to tell you a little bit more about why I started it and how you can participate. So the first time we landed on the moon was through a mission called Apollo 11. And before getting into that, I thought it would be good to cover 6 key terms: rocket, launch, astronaut, moon, lunar, and Apollo. So it might be good for you to actually practice saying these words with me, just to, kind of see how they sound. So go ahead and say rocket and launch and astronaut and moon and lunar and Apollo. Okay, now what I like to do is actually go through each of these terms individually to kind of give you some context and meaning about them. So rocket can actually refer to 2 things. One, it can refer to a tube-like device like these you see up here that actually have thrust or fire that comes out of the bottom that pushes it into space. It also can refer to the vehicle that's in space as well. So a rocket can get things into space, and a rocket can also be something that's in space. And rockets come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. You can see some differences in each of these rockets. Now, launch is a word in English that has lots and lots of meanings. These are some of the definitions that came up in the dictionary. The one that we'll be focusing on is really this definition that means send off. So it's when the rocket goes from sitting on the ground to actually, yeah, the fire starts coming out of the bottom and it takes off and starts going into space. But you should be aware that launch can also mean taking a boat or a ship and putting it afloat. So after they build a boat, they will actually launch the boat. And also it can mean to give a start, like somebody launches a business, or they launch a career, or they launch some type of project. And there's even a meaning around computers. When you double click on a program inside of Windows or click on something on your phone, you're actually launching a program. But today, the meaning that we're most interested in is really this launch that means to send off. And I should ask, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to raise your hand, and then Shashiraj or Jay can call on you, and we could talk about your question. But over here on the right, you can see several rockets in the act of launching, taking off. An astronaut. An astronaut is somebody who travels beyond the Earth's atmosphere, but it's also can be used to describe somebody that's training to go beyond the Earth's atmosphere. So that's what astronaut means. And the Americans, the Canadians, the Japanese, the Europeans, they all call their people astronauts, but Russia calls their the same type of thing cosmonauts. So that's one little difference. And then we all know about the moon. It's the thing that you see in the sky. It's the natural satellite that Earth has. It orbits around the Earth, and as it orbits, you actually see it go through various phases. And then lunar is used to describe something related to the moon, like lunar month.
Excuse me, Nathan. Excuse me, Nathan.
Yes.
Participants, I just want to ask to you that if you have any questions, anything, if you don't understand, please raise your hand. We'll let you ask questions to Nathan. All right, just understand what is talking about, and if you don't understand any line, any point, please ask. All right, it's a kind of conference, we can say that. Keep learning and keep removing your doubts. All right. Yes, Nathan, please continue. Yeah, do you have any
Absolutely.
question? Yeah, any person, anybody? Do you have any question? Yes, Huang, yes, ask your question.
Oh, what is catapult? Um, well, catapult can mean is both a noun and a verb. From a noun standpoint, it's actually a device used to throw things. And then catapult, the verb actually means to throw things. So used to in the age of um, castles and knights and horses and that type of warfare, people used to make catapults to throw things over the castle walls or into the castles or things like that. Um, so Apollo actually is a god from Greek mythology. Greece is located right here on the southern side of Europe, just across from Libya on the Mediterranean. And Greece actually, about 2,000 years ago, actually closer to 3,000 years ago, um, had conquered pretty much all of the Mediterranean. And Greece has been credited with coming up with concepts like democracy and drama and a whole bunch of other things that became the basis of European civilization. And they had a whole pantheon, a whole collection of gods and goddesses. And one of them was Apollo, who was the Greek god of the sun. And that's what the United States decided to name their uh, space program to go to the moon. Let's see, I got the request to go back one slide, so let's do that. Um, so Roro go. Um, let's see, did you have a question about this?
Yes. Any question? Please unmute yourself and ask question. Anybody?
Also, the chat works out well too, since I can see that. I see Mary's asking about the meaning of cosmonaut and astronaut and what's the difference between them.
What
So
is lunar?
we can go here. So cosmonaut and astronaut both mean the same thing. It's just the people in Russia decided to call their astronauts cosmonauts, and the people in the United States and Europe decided to call their cosmonauts astronauts. So, but atmosphere are somebody that's actually training to travel.
Yeah, there is one question. What is lunar?
And what is lunar? Lunar means, in its most basic form, having to do with the moon. So, like for example, if you got a rock from the moon, or rock. If you're dealing with the month that is kept by looking at the different phases of the moon, so the moon goes around the Earth every 28 days, you would call that the lunar month. If you're talking about the vehicle that lands on the moon, we would call that the lunar module.
The
So
kind of
basically,
duration.
yes, it's an adjective that means having to do with the moon.
Okay.
Okay, so now we start getting into the actual story bit. So Apollo 11 launched on July 16th, 1969, carrying three astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin. And here you can see the picture of the three and their rocket that actually took them into space and eventually around the moon and to the moon. I should mention that only two of the astronauts actually landed on the moon. One had to stay in orbit around the moon with part of the spaceship that was going to take them back. So a few days later, they actually landed on the moon, and that was on July 20th, 1969. Astronaut Neil Armstrong was the first person to step on the moon. And an estimated 650 million people watched Armstrong's televised image and heard his voice describe the event as he took one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Those were the words that he said as he was stepping off of the lunar module onto the ground. Um, let's see. And after they spent several hours on the moon of doing an exploration, the two astronauts, so with Apollo 11, it was Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, would re-enter the lunar module and it would take off and then meet the command module, which is the part of the spacecraft that was going to come back to Earth in orbit. Now, the last time that people went to the moon was Apollo 17, and they actually set up a camera so they could watch the lunar module take off. So I'd like to show you this video. And what I need to do is to make sure that you can hear the audio. Share sound. Okay, cool. So this.
Stage pushed. Engine arm is destined. Okay, I'm going to get the pro. 99 proceeded. 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Right away, Houston. Vector good. Ag thought.
And that is the vehicle taking off from the moon. One thing I wanted to point out to you is this bottom part that was used for landing stays on the moon. And it's only the little part that has the two astronauts that actually goes up, connects with the other part of the spacecraft that's in orbit around the moon. And that's going to be important for the next slide. So
It might
evidence
have
of
it
the
might have it might have kind of connector which released the rover, I think, in the space from the moon.
Yes. So on Apollo 11, they didn't have the little car to drive in, but in subsequent landings, I think it started with like Apollo 14. They actually had a little car they could drive around in. But one thing I wanted to show you about this photo is there's evidence of the Apollo 11 landing visible from spacecraft currently in orbit around the moon. Right here, you know, as the moon goes around the Earth, the sun hits the moon from a different angle. And you can see that little bottom part, the shadow of the bottom part right here, as the sun hits it from different angles. And also, even in some of these pictures, you can see the tracks that were left by the astronauts as they explored the area around their landing craft. So you can see that here. And this is where they set up some scientific equipment. So now in this series of photos, it's possible to see the shadow cast by the bottom of the lunar module that was left on the moon, as well as the tracks that the astronaut left on the moon as they walked about. So it's pretty exciting to actually get to see this with modern spacecraft. When looking at the Earth from the vicinity of the moon, the Earth is far enough away that it appears as a small sphere. And the Earth from this distance is nearly as small as the moon appears from the Earth. So when you look up in the sky and you see the moon, it's like a little sphere. But if you were on the moon looking back at the Earth, you would also see the Earth as a sphere. The first time we sent astronauts around the moon, they didn't land, but they went around the moon, was in 1968. And they took this picture, a picture like this, actually. It's called the Earthrise Pitcher because it made it look like the Earth was rising. And at that time, there was a lot of concerns about how we were harming the environment. And this picture was used by a lot of people to say, you know, it's one Earth, it's fragile, we need to take care of it. And it's really become like the poster of the environmental movement to try to ensure that we protect the Earth. So one thing that we might get from space is actually a better perspective of our situation here on Earth.
Yeah, there are also many satellites which are not
Wait,
working. They are
I
called
have
as
one
a
question, Shashiraj.
space garbage.
On
Yeah.
this slide, yes,
Mhm.
I have one question on this slide. Like as we see a moon from the Earth, so on daily basis, we can see the moon is cutting on daily basis, and after 15 days, it is increasing in his size. So when we were there on the moon, what how actually the Earth look like? It's
Mm.
all it's obviously the same like we are seeing from the Earth to the moon, and when we were at the moon, it's the same like appearance of this Earth, like continuously increasing and decreasing in the size.
Yes. So there's a question by Siju, who says, who took this photo? So this would have been Michael Collins in the command capsule, that part of the spacecraft that's left in orbit around the moon, while the two astronauts, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, actually landed. And so after that lunar module took off, it's now getting ready to dock with the command module. And he has a picture here with like the Earth in the background. This is the moon. And then this is the lunar module that's coming up to meet that part of the spacecraft. And they'll join together. And then the astronauts from the lunar module will come over into the command module. And then the command module will um, then come back to the Earth. And in the next photo, you can actually see it after it's kind of um, made its re-entry, and finally it's slowing down and preparing to splash down in the Pacific.
Yeah, that is
It,
fine. That is fine. But you know, what my question is that if you are there on the moon, how Earth look like? It
right
continuously
here.
is. Yeah. No, this is fine. This is only for one day. Okay, if
Mhm.
you stay over there for continuous for whole month. Okay, if you stay
Oh,
there.
yes. It'd be just like the moon, like you said. You'll
Yeah.
see the Earth, you'll have the full face of the Earth, and then you'll
Mm-hmm.
have part of the side of it will start to be in shadow, and then it'd
Yeah.
be in full shadow. And whenever it's in full shadow, you'll actually see the sun beyond the Earth, right?
Right.
Because that's, and then you'll see it go from being less of a shadow to more of the full Earth, and then repeat. So it's just like you said, that you would see the um, same kind of phases. Now, one thing is the rotation of the moon. It takes 28 days for the moon to go around the Earth. It also takes 28 days for the for the moon to rotate on its axis. What that means is the side that's facing the Earth is always facing the Earth, and the side that's facing away from the Earth is always facing away from the Earth. So
Oh.
unlike on the Earth where you see the moon go across the sky during the day, at night you'll see that the moon go across the sky. On the moon, it'd be different because of um, uh, how long the lunar day is and its rotation. The Earth will always be in the exact same spot in the sky,
Right. Right.
but it would go through its phases as
Right.
the days passed.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
hello.
you.
Just Hamid,
Hello?
your question?
Yeah, yeah, I have a question. I wanted to know, is there any gravity around the moon? This is first question. And the second, where the light is, which I see on the uh, on the Earth, uh, come from exactly?
Yes. So to the first question, our understanding of the universe is that everything that has mass causes gravity, and that the more mass you have, the more matter, the stronger the pull of gravity. Now, the moon is much smaller than the Earth, and the gravity on the moon for the astronaut that's standing on the moon would be 1/7 of that on the Earth. So if you weighed 70 kilograms on Earth, you would weigh only you only weigh 10 kilograms on the moon. So but you would still have the same amount of mass, and momentum would still be a problem. So but you would definitely weigh less, and you'd be able to carry more, assuming you had the same strength you had on the Earth because of that less weight. Where did life come from? That's a big mystery. I uh, I'm not sure. I think it's something that we'll continue to collect clues about, but may always be something that we never answer fully satisfactory.
Thank you.
Um, So only this little bitty part of the spacecraft made it back. That's the very tip part of the spacecraft. And one of the reasons why the Apollo program was unsustainable and why they stopped it was because everything had to be built just to be used for one trip. And that made it too expensive. But over the course of the Apollo program, we had 6 landings on the moon, each with 2 people. And that meant that 12 people walked on the moon. And these are those 12 people. Uh, and the last time people were on the moon was December 14th, 1972. So why did we go to the moon? Well, back in the 1950s and 60s, there was a government called the USSR. It included Russia and a whole bunch of other Eastern European states and other countries around here. You can see it highlighted here. Um, the USSR was actually the first country to put a satellite into orbit called Sputnik. It put the first living thing in orbit. It was a dog. The dog was named Laika. And it was the first country to launch a person in space. His name was Yuri Gagarin. And the USSR did a lot of other space firsts as well. Back in the 1950s and the 60s, the United States and the USSR were each trying to demonstrate the superiority of their technology, their economic systems, and systems of government. The United States decided that a first landing on the moon would demonstrate that the United States was able to catch up and get ahead of the USSR. However, once the United States had landed on the moon, interest in the program was reduced, and considering the high cost and lack of interest, the Apollo missions were stopped after Apollo 17, which was in 1972. Since then, no one has been to the moon. Did y'all have any questions or comments about this slide?
As we found that people are making a colony right on the moon, and the kind of land the people are selling the land on the moon, right? So is this a real thing or it's kind of fake?
I've gotten asked that question before. And before answering the question, I would tell you, if you have any doubts, go to your local bank and ask them for a loan and say, I'm going to give you this deed of property on the moon in order for collateral for the loan. If the bank gives you the loan, I would say it's real. If the bank says, ha ha ha, then I would say, please don't waste your money on it.
Right. But people are purchasing land on the moon. I have heard in very social media and Twitter and many social media, they claim that they have a land on the moon.
Well, and I'm happy to sell you land on the moon too. Phil, and I'll sell it to you at a discount. Whatever rate they're selling you at, I'll sell it to you for 1/10 the amount. So you can save
Okay.
money. You could get the exact same amount of. I even sell you twice as much land for 1/10 the cost. So that'd be good. But one thing is, before the United States went to the moon, Russia or USSR, and a lot of countries in the world, pretty much every country in the world, signed something called the Outer Space Treaty. And the Outer Space Treaty said that no country can claim ownership of anything off of the Earth. So used to, whenever the European explorers went someplace, they would go there and plant their country's flag and say, I claim this for Spain or I claim this for England. And then that territory would be recognized as being claimed for that country. The Outer Space Treaty says that even though the United States went to the moon and planted its flag, that's just a symbolic thing and doesn't mean that the United States owns anything there. Just like
Okay.
recently, in December, China sent a lander to the moon and it planted a Chinese flag. And China has also signed this treaty. So that flag is just there, as to commemorate that landing. Um, so pretty much all of the ability to own land is given to us and protected by a government. And since the government can't claim the land, you know, um, who's going to actually defend that ownership or recognize it? So I would tell you that all these places that are selling land on the moon or land on Mars are not credible. And I would definitely recommend that you don't spend your money on that. Um,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You know, we had one actor who committed
Yes.
suicide last year,
Right. Sushant Singh.
Sushant Singh Rajput,
Right.
and he had bought the land on lunar moon,
Right.
and he had a very special kind of telescope, and he used to watch his land from his home. And he
Yes.
committed suicide last year. There was lots of controversy. Like I think that you must be knowing about him or not. So people are buying. They have capacity of buying land on the moon, so they are buying.
Yeah.
well, they have the capacity to give their money that they've worked very hard to somebody that's willing to give them a certificate that says they own it. But I guarantee you that if China, Russia, European Union, the United States lands a lander on that part of the moon, they're not going to pay rent. So,
So
but
nobody can claim this is their land. Nobody can claim, right?
exactly. Uh, or another way to say it is everybody can claim. It's just that nobody's going to recognize each other's claims.
Yeah. Just because of the currently the transportation is not available, and currently the things is that the people cannot easily to and fro from moon to earth. If that happened, then it would be a very difficult situation for the people who bought the land on the moon.
Exactly. It looks like we have some more people in the waiting room. Jay and Sashiraj, are you keeping an eye on
Yeah,
that?
we
Yeah,
keep
yeah,
admitting
yeah.
all the participants.
Okie dokie. So a quiz. When was the first time that we landed people on the moon? Maybe you could just type the answer in the chat room. Yes,
1969,
Ijaz.
June 21st, 1969.
Excellent. Um, yes, July 20th, actually, 1969. But 1969 is good enough. Most of the people I talked to for my countdown to the moon project, I asked them when we went to the moon, and this is not as widely known as one might think. Well, that was the last time we went to the moon. Let's start talking about something that's in the future. The next time we're landing on the moon is through a project called Artemis. And maybe it'd be good to talk about Artemis first. And we kind of continue this pattern that we started of naming our space projects according to Greek gods and goddesses. And Artemis is actually the Greek goddess of the moon and is the sister of the Apollo, which is kind of a neat thing because you may remember those 12 people that walked on the moon. They were all white men. And one of the goals with Artemis is actually to put the first woman on the moon. And so it's kind of neat that we have uh, the sister of Apollo as the kind of the name for this project. So a question from Nikita: do you think we will one day live on the moon? Actually, my personal plan is to retire on the moon. I'm going to have a little house with the moon up in the, I mean, the Earth up in the sky, and I hope all of y'all will come and visit me. So I hope it's not too far away. But even if you don't come and visit me, wave at me from the Earth. So
And one more question I have, that if we are going to live on moon, so would be having would be stretching the life also age?
uh, what we've found so far with space travel is that space travel is actually bad for the human body. The weightlessness in orbit causes muscle decay and bone density to be lost. It's unclear on if that's still going to be a problem with the 1/7 gravity on the moon. But we also know that the Earth's atmosphere and magnetics, force generated by the Earth helps to protect the Earth from a lot of radiation from the sun and cosmic rays. And you don't have the same type of protection on the moon. There's thoughts that by living underground on the moon, you can help to get some protection. But as far as we know right now, unfortunately, going into space will most likely shorten your life, not make it longer, which is unfortunate. If it made it longer, I think there would be a lot of demand for going into space, but maybe we'll figure that out. Is it expensive to go there? It's extremely expensive to go there right now. The uh, the cost of going to the moon, I think right now is fairly unknown. The Artemis program is projected to cost something like $30 billion over 5 years. So that kind of gives you an idea.
Siju is asking some question. Yes, Siju, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, good evening, sir. I just heard by the end of 1972. So that's why we are stopped our missions to lunar. Is it right?
Yeah, 1972 is the last time we went to the moon. And largely, the reason we stopped going to the moon was we had wanted to go to the moon to show that the United States was more powerful and more technologically advanced than the Soviet Union, the USSR, and now known as Russia. And once we had actually gone to the moon first, people are like, "Well, you achieved your goal. Why are you still going back?" And it cost a lot of money. We also had a lot of other things going on at that time, and so that's pretty much why we stopped going to the moon. So NASA currently has the goal of putting people on the moon in 2024. However, the equipment that they're going to be using for this is still being developed. And what we have found is that oftentimes it takes longer to develop and test this equipment than what you plan on. So it's very possible that it may be several years after 2024 before you actually see people land on the moon. But to give you an idea of sort of the plans that we have with regard to exploring and developing the moon. Oh, I should also tell you some things are going to be different. So one difference is we're going to go with a very diverse set of astronauts. We're going to have women astronauts. We're going to have astronauts from all sorts of different backgrounds, so that the people that are going to the moon, a wider set of people will be able to identify with them. So is it safe to go in the moon? Sheila asked. Space travel is very dangerous. And I would say that a lot of precautions are taken, a lot of testing is done to try to reduce the risk, but it's always very risk. You keep adding more reasons why we shouldn't go to the moon, but you say you want to retire there. Yes, I know. Some people smoke and drink too, so those aren't good for you, but they still do that. So what can we say? Anyway, 4 astronauts will go on each trip instead of 3. 2 will stay in orbit around the moon. Last time we found out it was fairly dangerous just to have one person in that command capsule all by himself with no backup. We're also going with international partnerships. Part of the project is being built by Canada, by Europe, by Japan, and we're looking for partnerships from all countries around the world. We are also going with commercial partners. So some of this is going to be built by private enterprise, which the government will just rent or buy. Um, and we're also going with the intention of staying there permanently, of continuing to progress forward. There's a view of humanity where we only stay on the earth, and when our sun goes out, humanity goes. But there's another view where humanity learns how to live on the moon, on Mars, on the moons of Jupiter, on the moons of Saturn. We learn how to use the power of the sun to power civilization, and we actually, um, you know, figure out how to go to the next star. There's some things in the chat that I want to catch up on. So let's see. I've ever watched on YouTube, after going to space, the astronauts will not be able to stand straight on their foot normally, right? It takes some time to recover the stamina to stand on the foot normally. Yes, that is correct. If you're in free fall around the Earth for a prolonged period of time, you will lose your strength and your muscle mass. And whenever you come back to Earth, it will be very difficult for you. Let's see. Why does the moon have big rocks? Well, one thing about the Earth is the Earth has big rocks too, but we also have weather. We have water that gets into those, the cracks in the rocks and breaks them apart. We have the wind and the rain and, sand that blows against them and things like that. And you don't have these same processes on the moon, so you don't have the weather breaking apart the rocks. Um, there's no air on the moon in the sense of the Earth. There are um, some places where there might be a little bit of air for a little bit of time, but unfortunately, the moon's gravity is too weak to keep an atmosphere around it. How did the moon form? We're not exactly sure, but one theory is that a big rock hit the Earth during its formation, and that rock and part of the Earth joined together, and that became the moon. And I have not gone to the moon. In fact, I've not even gone into space. Um, okay, we're also going to prepare for trips further into space, like to Mars, and we're going for science. So the the tilt of the moon is only 1 degree with respect to the sun, and there's these big craters, and there's parts of those craters that are always in the shadow. And in these shadowed areas, it is very, very cold, colder than it is on the surface of Pluto. And over millions of years, comets have hit the moon, wet asteroids have hit the moon, and some of those water molecules have fallen into these cold areas, and they've been frozen. So we know that there's like water ice, carbon dioxide ice, and other types of really cold, um, molecules that when heated up, they become gas or liquid. That's why they're called volatiles. So we want to find out more about these. Can we use them as rocket fuel? Can we use them to create water for astronauts, air, and things like that? The impact history of the Earth-Moon system. Meteors are constantly hitting the Earth, like all the time, 24 hours a day, all the time. But the Earth's atmosphere causes most of these to burn up as they hit, come into the Earth. And the ones that do actually make it through the atmosphere, since the ocean makes up most of the Earth, most of them land in the ocean. And the ones that land on the land, the weather and the vegetation grow over it. So you don't have a good record of all of these impacts. However, the moon has no atmosphere and has been traveling through the same volume of space as the Earth. And on the moon is a record of these impacts. So we're able to go and study the moon and see what dangers might exist over hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of years that a little knowledge now can help us prepare and protect the Earth later. Also, the sun is constantly emitting these solar winds, radiation, and other things like that. And in the rocks of the moon, we believe will also be a record that will give us an idea about how the sun's activity has changed over time, because the sun is vitally important for life here on Earth. Let's see, Hamid has a question.
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you. Just I wanna to know. My question say that some people say the size of the moon is more bigger than the Earth. But I don't know people who went to the moon. Uh, I don't know what it looks like at down of the moon, and even I wanted to know how they go to above the moon by this way. And even in the earth, people don't know the end of the earth. This is the reason I want to know the biggest size and how they go to the above the moon. Thanks.
Sure thing. The moon is smaller than the Earth, so much smaller that the force of gravity exerted on things on the surface of the moon is 1/7 of that of things on the surface of the Earth. So if you weigh like 70 kilograms on the Earth, you'll weigh only 10 kilograms on the moon. How do you get to the moon? Well, it's about being able to make your spacecraft go fast enough, and this is usually done by using rockets so that you can accelerate as fast as the moon and get to the same orbit as the moon and get captured by it. There's also another question by Sahil on the chat that says, how much similar is the moon with the Earth? The moon and the Earth are very different. The Earth has an atmosphere. The moon does not. The Earth has, is much more massive, has liquid water. The moon does not. And also another thing is that the temperature on the Earth is not that big of difference. However, on the moon, on the the sun facing side could be like 200 degrees Celsius, and on the shadow side could be like negative 100 degrees Celsius. So you have like these huge temperature swings. How much does it cost for one-time travel to moon? I want to go there. Unfortunately, there is currently no commercial option to go to the moon, but hopefully that will change over the next 10 years and we'll know what the price is. But one thing is, you definitely will need quite a lot of resources to go there. It may be very difficult to control and manage your activities on the moon. Yes, there's a lot of things we have to learn. Is it possible to plant trees on the moon? Perhaps, but you would have to have it in some type of enclosed environment to regulate the temperature and to keep the atmosphere in.
Sheila Juma is
oh.
asking something. Yes, Sheila Juma. Ask your question. Sheila Juma. Can you hear me? You have raised your hand. Do you want to ask something? Okay, I don't know like whether she's listening or not. Wait, one question I have, Nathan. In the moon, is there any kind of disaster?
Okay, my question is.
Okay, yes, yes, please.
I have a question. Yeah, and my question is, why does the moon affect the tides? Hope you're getting what I'm saying.
Yes, absolutely. The moon's gravity actually is pulling the water towards the moon, and so as the Earth is rotating, a different part of the Earth is facing towards the moon, and that's why the high tide is always going to be on the moon facing side. And incidentally, it's also on the side that's facing directly opposite of the moon. It's only on the sides of the Earth that are just like 90 degrees from that direction where you have the low tide, but it's the actual force of the moon's gravity.
Okay, okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
Thank you. No, my question was that, like, natural disaster is also take place on the moon, like on Earth, many disasters that comes.
Well, you don't have any natural disasters with respect to weather, since we don't have weather on the moon. So like that's not a problem. But one problem you do have is with meteor impacts on the moon. There's no atmosphere to cause the meteors to burn up or to slow them down. And so if you look up at the moon and you see all those circles, those are where rocks have hit the moon
Mhm.
and have caused the material to fly out. And you would not want to be underneath that rock when it hit the moon. So that would
Okay,
be
when rocks that hits the moon, so that moment like mountains formed.
yes, usually a ring around it. You know, as it
Mhm.
hits, it causes the material to fly up, and then it usually lands in kind of a circular pattern.
Okay, that also affect. Does it affect the speed of the rotating of the moon?
Um,
Mhm.
as far as I know, no. I think the rocks are fairly small with respect to the moon, and the moon is very big. But you know, if you hit it with a big enough rock with fast enough at the right angle, I'm sure you can make an impact, but it would need to be significant.
Mhm. All right, please continue.
Sure thing. Um, so this is show you kind of the plan we have for the next 10 years. Each of these Artemis missions are human missions to the moon, starting with the one in 2022. The one this year is just going to be a test mission that won't have any people on it. And then you could kind of see the plans for building out some type of space station around the moon called the Gateway and a facility on the surface of the moon. I won't go into details here, but I just want to give you an idea of sort of like the scope and scale of the activities that we have planned for the moon. So I have a quiz for you. You could put the answer inside the chat room. How many more astronauts will there be on each Artemis mission than on each Apollo mission? Yes, there's going to be 4 on the Artemis, and there were 3 on Apollo. So that actually means there's 1 more. Uh, so, well, now I'd like to tell you about Countdown to the Moon. Um, Unfortunately, I do have to leave in about 7 minutes. So let me just go through this real quick. Let me tell you about this project that I have for Countdown to the Moon. This is the lapel pin for the NASA administrator who was responsible for making the 2024 date. He had this pin, and every day he would update it with the number of days till the end of 2024. And he would also go and highlight a specific NASA employee as being like the hero that was helping us get to the moon. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be good to find out what normal everyday people think about us returning to the moon? And so I decided to start asking them. I interviewed people on the streets of Houston. I've interviewed people in trains on the between York and Edinburgh in the UK. I've interviewed people, you know, at museums. I've interviewed people that just happen to be at the same hotel as me. I've interviewed people who were taking a smoke break, um, you know, from their job. I've interviewed people who worked at restaurants. I've interviewed people online. I've interviewed Shashiraj, and one of these days I want to interview Jay. I know it. I've also interviewed Nikita. She's on the phone. Um, and I've done over 400 interviews so far, and I'm counting down the days to the end of 2024, and I have 1,408 more days to go. Um, our local newspaper, the Houston Chronicle, actually did an article about my project December of last year, commemorating my 1 year anniversary of the project, and I'd like to interview each of you. So if you could, go to countdowntothemoon.org. There's a link at the top that says interview me. And on that page, it tells you about my project. And there's a link to an online calendar where you can sign up for a day and a time that would work for you. And then we can meet up at that time and I can interview you over Zoom and you could be part of my project. I'm doing this for 4 more years. So feel free to, you know, do it anytime over that time. Also, I'd like to connect with each of you. I'm listed as Gadget Nate on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. So if you just go look for Gadget Nate, you'll be able to find me there. Anyway, I really appreciate this time of getting to talk to you and sharing about something that I really enjoy. And thank you so much, Nikita, for putting the links to Countdown to the Moon and to the Calendly site so they could sign up for a day into the chat room. So everybody look at the chat room and you have the links right there. I have about 4 more minutes for questions and comments. Does anybody have anything they would like to talk about in that time?
Yeah, just we have only
Sir,
4
one
minutes.
question.
So no question at all. You guys please ask questions directly.
Okay,
We have only
Nathan.
4
Nathan, first of
minutes.
all, turn off your screen.
Oh, turn off my screen? Sure.
Yeah. Then it would be good.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's good.
Can I share?
Nithar is with us in our Telegram group, and you can ask questions directly to him. He already provide his own informations. So guys, you don't worry at all. You can take personal interview with Nathan also. Okay. So just enjoy the sessions. You can ask
No,
anything.
let
We
them
have
ask
only 3 to
question
4
now.
minutes.
Let them ask question now. It's a conference, right?
Okay.
Let them ask question, right? Yes,
But if
please.
they don't get chance in this 4 minutes, after that, I'm just telling them.
Yeah.
If nobody can ask in this 4 minutes, they can ask like that way. Yeah, please
Yes,
go on, guys.
please go ahead.
Absolutely. And if you do ask a question in a Telegram, if you wouldn't mind just, sending it directly to me because there's so much that's happening in that Telegram chat, I might miss your question. And I want to make sure I answer each of your questions.
Yes, Sadiq. Are you Sadiq?
Yes, I need to ask some
Yeah,
question.
please.
Okay, thank you for lecture. It is very interesting, but I need to ask. There is living in moon. I think it is very hard. And how will be like there is no gravity, and how people will live there?
Okay.
Yes, so people will have to live in artificial environments. In Dubai, it's a hot place with lots of sand and lots of heat, but yet they have indoor ski slopes. So if you go skiing in Dubai, you can live on the moon. But it is important to keep in mind there is gravity in the moon. It's just less than it is on Earth. I should also point out there is gravity in space as well. There is a common misconception that the reason the astronauts are floating is because there's no gravity in space. And this is actually incorrect. There is gravity in space, and that's why the spaceship continues to go around the Earth. But the thing is that the spaceship is actually in a state called free fall, where it is actually falling towards the Earth, but moving so fast forward that it keeps missing it. And so that's why the people are floating in the spacecraft.
Yeah, Sheila Juma, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question, but I think it's more of complicated, but let me ask. Mr. Nathan Price, do you think it is possible that the moon was once a star and is now a black dwarf?
Well, the thing that we know about stars is that they are usually made up of lighter elements like hydrogen and helium. And they fuse it together, and then kind of that material gets spread out into the universe. But as I think about it, pretty much everything in the universe actually came from stars. So all of your heavier elements were actually created in stars. So it would not be necessarily incorrect to say that the moon had come from a star. It just actually may have come from a whole bunch of different stars and the materials from it. But that's a whole different discussion in terms of how the materials in the world are made. Shashiraj, unfortunately, I must go, but it was good to meet everybody. And I definitely would like to stay in contact in the Telegram group. And we could have a follow-up session if there's interest.
Yeah, thank you very much for being with us. And you have given your precious time with us. And I hope that participants, they have learned something about space and moon. And that time is not enough to know more about space and moon and other planets. Maybe in the future, we'll be having more session with you and we'll be talking about the more planets and some other questions, right? So thank you very much for being with us. All right, so participant, as Jay has told us that Nathan is already in our Telegram group, you may ask question over there. Nathan has got time. He would see the question. He would answer you. All right. So guys, now the thing is that it's time of our breakout room. Jay, we can have discussion on the breakout room. We have still 30 minutes. Participant can discuss and they can have conversation on this topic. That would be good. Jay, are you here? Jay and Huang. Let me create the breakout.
Yes, we are here. We are here only.
Great,
We
great, great.
just listening to the people.
So now,
Thank
guys,
you.
so would you be making the breakout room or shall I make automatically?
Is that